You are a Bitcoin thinker, I would say a philosopher, uh, an author. You write for Bitcoin Magazine, and also an investor. And today I thought we would wrap philosophical a little bit about Bitcoin, what it is, the history of money, maybe get into morality and religion a little bit. And to kick us off, you have this great pinned tweet on your Twitter profile, which I will read, and then I'd like to work with you to unpack a bit. You wrote that humans have a 4,000 year addiction of printing monetary energy. You have zero hope to fix the addiction by having a different human in charge. The only fix is to create a mathematical algorithm that cuts humans out of the loop via game theory. Top contender, Bitcoin. Big deal. So that tweet captures a lot of the lesson we're trying to explore in this show. It's like what's wrong with the money? How can we fix it? How significant are the problems created by the monopolization uh, and central planning or corruption of money? And to what extent does Bitcoin promise to fix them? So, very dense tweet, a lot packed in there. Can you help me to unpack some of this in a digestible fashion for my audience?
Sure. Um, I think when it comes to when most people hear about Bitcoin, they think of a number that goes up, or they think of it like a stock or like an investment, like any other thing out there. And, to be fair, I understand why people think that, but the rabbit hole, let's say, or the journey that many people through your show, many people through books or learning about Bitcoin come to is the epiphany of that tweet, epiphany that this thing is different. And I love history. I've loved history my whole life. I love reading history. And to me, it's very clear, it's always been very clear that one of the primary ways at which humans take advantage of other humans or exploit other humans, slave other humans, is via distorting the money of that society. It's very easy for us to read about events of war in history or disease or things like that. That's easy for us to understand because their names and dates, it's easy to test. There's an easier incentive to promote that kind of learning. But I think there's some things in history that are undertaught or underappreciated. And I think one of those is monetary history. And I think another part of that too is technological paradigms, but we'll get to that more later, I guess.
Hmm.
But I think when one steps back and they stop watching the news and they stop thinking about the day, think about the day, the week, the month, the quarter, and they look back at history, I think it becomes very clear what that first part of the tweet says, that for the last 4,000, 3,500, 5,000, however many years we may define, for thousands of years, the way at which humans have been able to exchange monetary energy, aka money, our financial and economic savings, is through various sets of information that are controlled by human beings. Some are much better than others, but at the end of the day, everything's been able to be controlled by human beings, which inevitably means it will be controlled by human beings.
Hmm.
So obviously, you can go all the way back to Egypt or Rome or ancient China or whatever. You have things like gold, salt, grains, silver. Things that are analog, let's say, things that are physical that take energy to produce. We have used those as backing or supporting the kinds of money of the society, or in fact, they are the money themselves. And because it's analog, people have been able to control those. What's often jokingly called bigger gun diplomacy.
Hmm.
Whoever has the bigger weapon or is able to exert the larger force, often through violence. It doesn't necessarily have to be violent, but that's often what it descends into. Whoever can exert the larger force gets to control resource, gold, water, land, farming land, oxen, whatever it is, we've been able to control that. And the same thing is true with our form of money today. We have fiat currencies that are controlled by human beings, boards of human beings.
Thank you so much for watching my content and being a supporter of mine. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun for me to do, and it's really meaningful to know that so many people are enjoying my content and learning about Bitcoin. I think it's so important for people to get off zero. In addition to getting off zero, it is really critical. It is really important that you also begin taking self-custody of your sats and of your Bitcoin. This is because if you have Bitcoin on an exchange or you don't have proper self-custody, this is going to be a massive problem for you in the future, most likely. If Bitcoin starts having rapid periods of appreciation and there are rapid spikes in demand for Bitcoin education, and for Bitcoin advocates and advisors, it's going to be increasingly important that you have self-custody of those coins. So my message to you is please consider getting that self-custody. Now, you can do that on your own. There are plenty of free tutorials online. There's plenty of great work like that. But if you want somebody to help you with self-custody, if you want somebody to help you take cold storage of your Bitcoin, of your Satoshis, if you want somebody to help you set up a multi-sig vault, to set up an estate plan, to set up a plan for you as a person, an individual, as a business owner, as a charity, whatever the case, I work at the Bitcoin Advisor, and I'm happy to say that I really enjoy it. I love working with my clients. My job is literally to help people buy Bitcoin and secure it properly for years, decades, and generations to come. So if you want to learn about my services at the Bitcoin Advisor and what we do, you should click the link in the description. Here you can read a bit about what I do. You can book a free consultation with me. You can book a free meeting with me. I'll send you lots of free complimentary paperwork explaining how multi-sig vaults work, cold storage, giving you all the education you need. Everything's fully open source, what we do. Our main goal is education, helping get coins off exchanges, and people be able to not lose sleep at night when they buy and secure their Bitcoin. So you can feel free to book a meeting with me. The first one is free and complimentary, just to figure out what your priorities are and get that adjusted. But if that's something that could be used to you, I really highly encourage you to take self-custody, whether that's with me or not. Please just do it. But for the many of you that probably will eventually want a multi-sig collaborative custody vault, the Bitcoin Advisor could be the place to go. And so click the link in the description, check that out. Really appreciate your time.
And the idea of Bitcoin is not that this is some other thing that humans can control and, oh, you can buy it and get rich quick and you can make a bunch of money. The idea is it itself is the money. The idea is, what if we were to find a way to store that purchasing power outside the control of a human being? So if you have fiat or you have another analog commodity, that can be put in control of human beings, and so it will. And so the only way to circumnavigate that human distortion and corruption is to take humans out of the loop entirely. And when I often tell people, especially those that are just hearing about Bitcoin for the first time, that people like Henry Ford or Nikola Tesla or Hayek or Friedman or many others of the 20th century, dozen and a half or so people over the course of the century predicted Bitcoin decades or even a century before Bitcoin was created. They have trouble understanding that because when we think of Bitcoin, we think of numbers and computers and cyberspace. It's abstract, so it's hard for us to identify. But at the end of the day, what those people are predicting was that they were predicting this idea that eventually humans would innovate into finding a way to have this discovery of detaching monetary energy, aka money, aka the series of ones and zeros we use, away from being able to be controlled by a single human being. And so I think when most people hear me talk about Bitcoin and say that it's going to go up, it's going to go to X price, they hear someone saying, oh, Bitcoin's a big deal because it's going to make you 10 times richer. While that's true, the real reason Bitcoin's a big deal, and I've been saying this now on Twitter for 8 months here since January 2023, the reason it's a big deal, first and foremost, is because it detaches that human control from money itself. Bitcoin's going to become more valuable, but only because it first is a more moral system, and because first it is more secure. A system that doesn't require human oversight, that doesn't require human intervention, is inherently more secure than one that does. If I were to, do, calculus or algebra for you on a piece of paper with a pencil, that system is more corruptible than a calculator. Granted, you have to make sure the calculator works, but assuming the calculator works, either works or it doesn't. It's either a 0 or 1. And assuming it works, it's inherently a better system because even if I'm the best math genius in the world, I'm a human being. and I can either make a unintentional mistake and get the wrong answer, or I can intentionally manipulate in my equations and lie to you and deceive you. So that's the message I've been sending. That's the message of that tweet, is that Bitcoin's a really big deal, and it's going to become exponentially more valuable over the coming years, decades, and possibly centuries. Um, Primarily because it is a technological innovation that then discovered that immutable digital scarcity that humans cannot alter or edit, and that because it is that more moral, that more finite, infinitely finite system, it's inherently more valuable, in the same way that a calculator is more valuable than a pencil and a piece of paper. And in the same way, I give this metaphor too, that, and I think Saylor said this metaphor, and perhaps you have too, so you've probably heard it before, but for the listeners, is that if you think of this from an engineering perspective, because that's what all technology is, it's just engineering better innovations, is that we can think of, up to this point in human history, last 4,000 years, as having a series of ships that have a hole in their hull. So they're taking on water and they're slowly sinking, like take gold, or you could take ancient Roman coins, you could take paper currency, fiat currencies from the Dutch, the British, or the Americans. And all these forms of storing energy have that kind of energy leak. And the problem is that as the value of that energy goes up, as the value of that gold or that fiat currency or whatever goes up, the incentive increases to dilute it. If everyone is demanding a house and house prices keep going up, what's my incentive? My incentive is to build more houses, to provide that value for other people. And so when it comes to money, and the value that money is going up, the incentive suddenly becomes to produce more of that as much as possible. And that's good, that's healthy, that's the nature of prices, they communicate that. But what does that mean? That means that consistently, we're dumping more gold onto the market, we're dumping more houses onto the market. This I often, get told it's no better than cows. Oh, well, you can't store your wealth in cows. Cows breed, you can have more cows, and it's so easy, the cows will do it for you. So you can't store, and it's like, oh, but beef has intrinsic value. You can eat beef, and that's true. But as the value of these things go up, we have the incentive to produce more of it, which ultimately is good for society. But the idea of Bitcoin is, what if you have this thing that you can hoard, that you can save, and that you can store, and no matter how far price goes up, humans aren't able to create more.